Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the craziness that lives inside my head. Today I want to talk about extraterrestrial because my crazy head has it that I am not from this planet. I'm from somewhere else, but it ain't here. And I want to talk about my childhood. It started in my childhood. I remember I couldn't have been no more than 3 years old. And at 3 years old, I remember seeing my mother, believe it or not, for the first time. So don't ask me what happened to me the 3 years prior to that. But I was 3 years old. I happened to look at my mother and my grandmother and everybody surrounding me, and they all looked like aliens. I mean, it was something about the eyes. I remember looking at the people's eyes. I said, "What are those things in their face?" And of course, as I got older, there were eyes. And I remember thinking at that time that my mother and my grandmother and all those aunts and uncles around me were foreign. That I didn't feel that I was part of them. I felt that I was part of something else. And that was when I was 3 years old. And as I grew up, I remember um, I remember late at night. Could be my imagination. I was one of those kids scared of the boogeyman. And I used to be scared to go to sleep in my bedroom at night. And I used to tell my mom that there's a guy, a boogeyman, but we didn't call it boogeyman. I just told her there was a guy with a black hat peeking through the window. We had shades, and oh, you know how shades are. There's a little piece there that stays open. Well, I guess I imagined whatever that this guy was peeking through this shade at me. And I believe it or not, I remember going to the store with my grandmother one day. We walking in the street, going to the grocery store, and I saw this guy. He was dressed in black, and he had the same hat on that in my head, I guess, as a child, I thought that was him. And I said, "Oh, that's the guy. That's the guy that be peeking at me at night." So came to pass as I got older, and this happened. Oh my goodness, this happened up until I guess when I got into the fifth grade. So I had to be what 11 years old, and it stopped by the time I got into fifth grade. And one of the reasons why I think it stopped because we moved. Every night, this guy, since I was 3 to the time I guess when I was 10 years old, what was that, 5 years, was peeking through my window every night, same time every night. And it didn't bother me towards the end before we moved because I'm thinking, well, he must be sent here to look after me. I thought that I was not part of this planet, and that boogeyman, that guy, was sent here from the planet that I belong to watch over me, to make sure that I didn't, get in trouble with the humans. Then, as time goes on, um, I used to think when I got in my teens, I used to think I could read people's minds. That's how crazy I was. I used to think this. I used to sit in class and and I guess the teacher thought something was wrong with me because she would say, "Are you okay?" And I'd be staring. What I'd be doing is I was trying to communicate with the other classmates through my mind. That's how crazy I was, I guess. That's when I was a teenager. Then when I became 20, oh my God, forget it. I was off the hook. When I became 20, well, I drank through my 20s and early 30s. You put a drink in me, I get high, and I'll tell everybody that I was an extraterrestrial. I said, I don't belong here. This is not my planet. I belong over there. And then I twirled around the dance floor. I believed that I was not part of this planet. I belong somewhere else. Then, of course, I guess if you heard my story, I stopped drinking. Yeah, I stopped drinking and all this. But then, when I stopped drinking and drugging, I began to have lost time. Yeah, lost time. There were quite a few times that I'd be on the train home. Now, maybe you could say I think in my head too long, but I'd be on the train going home, and I know my next stop. And let's say I get off of work at 5, I usually get home by 6, and I know that's the next stop. My next stop is close to 6 o'clock. I mean, I did have a watch. I usually wear a watch. I couldn't wear watches, I kept breaking them. But I remember that time I had a watch, and then it was close to 6. Yeah, the usual time I get home. My stop was the next stop. I get off the next stop. I swear to you, I get off the next stop, and I'm not at my stop. I'm something like 6 stops away. And I'm looking at my watch. It's 6 o'clock. And I'm like, well, how did that happen? I mean, this is a ride I've been taking home 5 days a week, the same train, the same stop. Now, how all of a sudden is I get to be 6 stops away, knowing that my stop is the next stop, and my watch says 6 o'clock. That's where I'm supposed to be. Anyway, I I have that stuff. And then if you heard the story, I know if you heard my podcast, the story about my abduction, that happened. Well, what I'm telling you now about that stop thing, that happened in the 80s. My abduction happened at 78. So now in the 80s, I'm having this. I call it lost time. There were times I could be on the train. Now, mind you, I'm stone sober and I'm not sleeping. I'm wide awake. And well, first of all, you'd be scared to sleep on the trains in New York City because you never know. I've seen people get ripped off in mid daylight in a full car of people. And guys, if you fall asleep, I've seen people fall asleep and they get ripped off, and the people don't say anything. So I was make sure that I got my eyes wide open. But the same thing happened again. This time, I think I was supposed to get off 6 o'clock. I was supposed to get off my stop. I'm at the end of the stop. When I was just before we got there, they said last stop. I said can't be last stop. I'm at the last stop. So I'm like, well, what the freak happened? So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe I've been transported. My mind must be transported to that other place where I come from, and I just can't remember what it is. But always thought I've been transported. What do they call that? There's a word for that. People who can transport themselves into another time zone or another place. Unfortunately for me, I didn't know what place it was. So I believe that I am extraterrestrial. I wrote a book about it, and that's why I got that idea for my book, Nemesis Horizon Project, the reptilian logs. I'm not a reptilian, but in the book, I'm a hybrid. I'm half reptilian, half human. Crazy, right? God, where did I think of this stuff? I don't know. It just like it's been in my mind for years. Right now, in my crazy mind, when I go on Facebook, I joke about it. When people say, "Oh, the 2020, what next can happen in 2020?" Well, the mothership could come down in the 2020 and take us away. Those of us who want to go. I used to have a dream back in the 80s. I've had it for a while. I stopped having it in the 90s, but I know in the 80s I used to have this dream. My mother was alive, and in this is a concurrent dream. And in this dream, I dreamt that there was a ship, a mothership, came down, and there was a bunch of people around me, and we were going into the ship, and I didn't want to go. I'm very belligerent. I said, I ain't going on that damn ship. And I remember my mother, she was behind me. She told me to go ahead. Nothing's going to happen. They're good people. They're your people. I remember that dream. And and in that dream, I said, okay, I guess I'll go. I guess so. I guess when the mothership come, I'll be ready to go. I think. And then again, who knows what the mothership is? But I want to just say this though. I do believe I have an guardian angel. I started believing that in the last 5 years. I mean, if you know my life, I've been through a lot in my 60 some years on this planet. A lot. And it's surprising I'm still alive. Like right now, we're in a pandemic. I remember back in the 80s, we had the HIV, the AIDS pandemic. I mean, I'm surprised I survived that because back then you didn't. Not that you had didn't have a, you had to wear masks or didn't want to wear masks. It wasn't a mask thing. It was sex or no sex. And you know when you're gay and young, you're gonna have sex. I was very lucky, very lucky. And even now, when my drinking days, I used to have car accidents and all kinds of stuff. I got robbed like three or four times. I got arrested 8 times. I mean, I survived all that. So I got a guardian angel. I tell everybody. I told my cousin the other day, I got a guardian angel. Is it a guardian angel or is it an extraterrestrial watching over me? Or I might just be extra eccentric. I hope I said that right. Thank you for listening to my craziness. Signing off, Eric, the craziness that lives inside my head.